Welcome to How Else Will We Know with Caroline Fleur. I interview people who have a connection to food allergies, plus other interesting topics as well. Let me tell you what happened to me back in 1951 during my... This show is meant for fun and to inspire thinking and curiosity. We are not giving legal or medical advice of any kind. Thanks for joining. And you don't know what's going to happen. This is part 2 of episode 2 with restaurant general manager Kim Morehouse. Part 1 was posted on my YouTube channel on November 5th, 2021. Thanks for watching. And you had mentioned chains. Sometimes, not always, but sometimes people try to avoid chains because they want to eat at the mom and pop places, the small places, the hole in the wall that you find. And I totally understand that. But we usually eat at chain restaurants, especially when we travel. And I hadn't really thought about the reason, but you're right. When it's a chain, that means there's a more regimented policy that goes across all the restaurants. We've always felt safer there. We always eat at the Outback Steakhouse. That's one my son loves. Yep. They've been wonderful every time. Places like that. And we try to avoid the mom and pop places with my son. My husband and I go there though. So they still get their attention, but that's why I hadn't really thought about the reason, but now I see that.
Yeah. And there's a reason why in the bigger restaurants, they not only have the money to do the allergy training, right. They have better checks and balances in place, but in those bigger restaurants, there's a thing called line check. And that is completed multiple times a day. It's usually created first thing in the morning before the restaurant gets open and goes to set up. And that's literally going through checking that all your refrigeration is good. Everything's in good working order. They have all the safety sanitation. Your product is safely stored. It's labeled properly. The dates are good. You know, there's a laundry list of hundreds of things that you're checking. And that in chain restaurants is done 3 times a day minimum, sometimes 4. And it's usually done by 2 managers at a time. So that one is writing and the other one's checking, and they have a little cart that goes with them that has temperatures and test strips, and it has, gloves. It has everything you could imagine to do this. Smaller restaurants are not doing that. And they don't have it's time consuming. It's a big time. It's time consuming. A good line check takes an hour. And if you have 2 managers, now you've got 2 managers out of pocket for an hour doing this. However, any big restaurant chain you can think of does it. I know them all. Really? And people, they all do it. And so you're going to just naturally have better practices in place in those because they're held to that. If let's say you skip it and you have a restaurant that's not doing it over location, if they're caught with that, they lose their job. If the health department comes in and asks to see those, they're written up if they're not done. We also have in those big chains, every one of them, we get our health inspections. Everybody gets a health inspection. However, the big chains pay for an extra company to come in. It's either called EcoSure or SteriTech. And they are a serious deep dive health inspection that goes about 100 times deeper than any health department does. And those happen 4 times a year unannounced. Wow. And you don't know when they're coming ever. And they check everything, including your ice machines, your ice lines. I mean, they check under your equipment, your floor drains. They are checking it all. Health, that everyone has their up-to-date health cards. And again, you fail one of those as a manager in your store, you lose your job. So there are big, serious things attached to that make them keep those checks and balances and standards up high. So that's why when I go out to eat with my son, it's probably going to be a chain because I know that those systems are in place to make sure that we're safe.
Wow. I did not know that. That's great to know. And it makes sense. You have to have this money for it. You have to have enough staff for it. You have to have guidelines that everyone's learning and being trained. It just takes money, time.
And that's truly why I trust chains. I know everyone's like, oh, a chain, you can't get authentic food. Well, if you're dealing with an allergy, No.
We like it.
You're going to be safer. Yeah. You're going to be safer. Yeah. And one of the scariest things, and I'll just share this as a restaurant side, ice machines. They are one of the biggest things that can give food poisoning and ice makers. So if you go places that are kind of sketchy, including your mom and pops, don't get ice in your drink. It's one of the biggest causes for food poisoning that there is.
Really? Maybe because they don't have time to clean it out.
The lines, and they're a nightmare, because we would actually have to dismantle our entire machine at least once a month to clean inside, because it's cold water. It's called cold water mold. And most places do not dismantle those machines and do it. Okay. So again, my son's allergic to mold. So as an allergy perspective, we avoid ice. But I don't in the bigger places, because I know that's a part of their SteriTech or their EcoSure or their health department and their line check. So there's 4 checks that are in place, knowing that ice machine is getting detailed and cleaned as it should.
Great. That's even better to know. The ice has to come from the water coming in and freezing. And if those aren't cleaned out.
Yeah. It's not something that's thought about a lot, but again, coming from that side, I'm super aware of it. I'm very picky about where we'll eat out, and I don't eat out often since the allergy arrived, but truly now we are very laser focused, and it's chain restaurants that I know have these systems in place, because I know they're getting checked and they're getting done.
Right. And allergy parents and families are very loyal. Once we go somewhere and we realize they take it seriously and it's safe, we tend to go back to the same places over and over. And we know the staff or the manager after a while. And something I always suggest is when you go out to eat with an allergy is to also tip well. If you've asked for all these things and they've done all they can and you eat and leave safely, also be sure to tip well, because the people went out of their way, and also just for the good of the food allergy community, to be like an ambassador for the food allergy community and say, look, we asked for a lot, but we were very nice and we tipped well to the people to show our appreciation. And I understand not everyone can. We're not the richest people on earth, but we try to make that happen every time, just because the next time someone comes in with food allergies, maybe they won't say, oh, again. Maybe they'll say, okay, this is going to be okay. They'll be nice people. They'll tip well. They'll appreciate what we do. Yeah.
For that reason, I do tip well, and I will also make sure to review and call out that they handled the allergy well for a few reasons. One, I want them to know that I have noticed and appreciated that they handled the allergy well. So therefore their efforts into that are super appreciated. But that way the other allergy parents that could be trying to do research on a place to go eat can see that review and go, oh, they did a really good job with this. Great. And in a lot of restaurants, they give you the little reviews to do on hand right then and there. I will also comment on those, because I happen to know those get sent straight to corporate right then. So if their corporate is seeing that message come in, a lot of them have little tabletop kiosks, or they'll say, hey, take the survey when you get home. Those go to corporate and get sent to them right away. They're reading them. But if they see over and over, thank you for having a good allergy program, or I wish you would have a better allergy program, they're seeing that. And so I encourage you to really leave that feedback, because that way the awareness is out there, but they're seeing all these people, how many lives it affects and how many of their true guests it affects. So it's something that I always make sure I do as well.
That's a good idea. And we really don't do that. As much as I know from being an author, I know how important reviews are. And it's really hard to get reviews because everyone's busy, including myself. I never really reviewed books before I wrote one. I thought, it's really hard to get reviews. You can't really get reviews from close friends or family. You're not allowed to. So you just have to wait for reviews to come in. And that takes a long time. And it's probably the same thing with restaurants, hoping people will do a review, and not a bad one. It seems like people love to run out and do a review if they have a bad experience.
That's exactly right. I encourage that you talk about the allergies in it, because the awareness, like you said, we need to have better laws here. We need to have better awareness for everyone. So the more that word is thrown out there and it's seen by the people that in the corporate offices, because they're not down in the trenches, they aren't hearing it like the manager, the servers are. So it's important to get that funneled up, and let them see that, because those surveys go right to them and they do see them. So it's important.
Okay. I'm going to start doing that at the restaurant as well, especially because after we eat, and it's been great, and they've tried, and my son is sitting there happy and healthy and not having any problems, I'm more than excited to do a review at that moment. So maybe I'll ask, do you have surveys here or reviews that we can do at the table? They probably do, even if it's not sitting out, and I can do it at that moment. So I have asked for the manager before, because I had not spoken with the manager. And the last time I did that, the server was like, is everything okay? And I said, yes, it was
petrified.
I'm like, it was wonderful. It's great news. And I just want to ask the manager a couple of questions and let her know. I don't know, from my experience, oftentimes it seems like it's a woman. So I tend to say, I'll tell her, but it's not always. I will tell her how well it went and what happened because I want her to know. But you're right. The people making the big decisions in corporate need to know.
They need to know. They absolutely need to know. And that was one thing that I noticed that, like I said, I was with Red Robin when it really, which you guys have down there in the South. I just don't know if you've seen a lot of them. They're huge up here. They actually started in Seattle, but there's
a few,
I think 800. Yeah. They're like 800 locations nationwide. And I happen to work in the busiest one of all of them. And we actually beat sales records. So it was just logistically the craziest place I've ever worked. And that's where I worked when we launched the allergy program. And we would do $5,000-$6,000 hours, so it was just insane volume. And so learning to do the allergy program in an environment like that for me, then I went to the other locations. It was a cakewalk, it was just like, this is nothing. But it is a pretty intense system. But they took it to heart because there was a lot of feedback coming to them about allergies, like we need to have something, and they owned it. And I was very proud to be a part of that. But it was because of the feedback that was coming directly to them as well. Like, hey, this is something that's important. It's something that is very much out there, and we need to make a good, viable option for our allergy guests. So it is important. So get that feedback out there.
Yeah. Okay. I will. I'm going to do better about that. I'm making a statement that I'm going to do better about doing restaurant reviews.
Perfect.
As a restaurant manager, when customers come in and tell you there's an allergy, do you ever share with them that you have a husband and son with food allergies, just to show them that you deeply understand what they're saying?
Absolutely. A lot of it's twofold. One, it's to let them know that I understand, but two, that I empathize, and I understand exactly their feeling, and that I will do everything I can to make sure that they feel safe, and I'll take it serious. And it always puts them at ease knowing that I have to deal with that as well. So I would encourage anyone that's in the industry, if you have to deal with it, to let the guests know that it's okay. It's not too personal to talk about. It's a fact that a lot of us deal with daily. So I definitely make sure that anybody I talk to is aware that I too understand, and I will make sure it puts them at ease. It's really to put them at ease and let them know I get it and I'll take care of you.
Yeah, I think it's great. I've been told by managers that the manager himself or herself have a food allergy. They'll say, I am allergic to this food, or they'll say, we have staff allergic to this food. And that's what surprised me, because I didn't think about a restaurant as somewhere staff could work that had food allergies. And at minimum, it's still helpful. I've been told we have a lot of customers that have food allergies that eat here. So I feel like there's different responses, even if it's not you yourself or your immediate family member or the staff at the restaurant. Still, just saying people come in here all the time with food allergies. That helps. Everything helps.
It does, because that they understand what they're doing, and if they have that repeat business, then they're doing it well.
Right.
So the allergy plating is a different story. Sometimes they'll have even special plates and baskets or wraps or plate, whatever it may be, whatever kind of restaurant that are used specifically for allergies, so that you can kind of look around and see. I was sitting in a restaurant. It was right before COVID. I don't know what restaurant, but I noticed my son got something delivered and his was different than I'd seen. It was the first time we'd eaten there. And I kind of looked around, and at that time I saw 2 or 3 other tables with a different color. So when the server came over, I asked, and they said, yeah, that's an allergy indicator. And that way the managers, when they're walking around, can make sure they understand that's an allergy table, and they can stop and make sure everything's okay. So seeing that kind of care, it totally makes you feel better from the guest perspective or the allergy perspective, that you're in a place that does take it serious.
Right. And that's so important to all of us. So as a mother, as a wife to someone with food allergies, and a restaurant manager for years and years, what do you focus on with your child, with Jake? Like reading labels, because he's 8 years old. He's not going to run off to a restaurant by himself like my son does, who is a junior in high school. Yeah. It's different. But what are you focusing on now?
So with Jake, he's known early that there was an issue, even before he was speaking clearly, because we had an early issue. We let him know right away, no nuts. And how it really became for him was Halloween. It was the first Halloween that we approached, that he got all this candy and he wants to dive into it when he would get home, and he's a little guy. And I said, no, we have to look for nuts. And so he's like, well, what does that look like? So I wrote down the word, all the nut words. I wrote nut and I wrote peanut and I wrote out everything. And he just kind of took that list and he compared it to all the candy and we went through it together slowly so he could know, oh, no Snickers, no Reese's, no this, and put it to the side. So that's how it started. It has then morphed. The child memorized that list and he knew. So anything and everything from the time he was about 2 to 3, I brought into the house. He was reading the label and letting me know. And I had things in my cabinets. He would pull things out that were already there and just to read them and be like, did you know? And he's bringing me the label. And I'm like, I had no idea, so he would catch things at a young age before he could even read that he could do that. So fast forward to 8 and now us knowing all his allergies and being more aware of so many more than just nuts. He's still doing that. But now he started school since then. And he tells everyone he comes into contact with, I'm allergic to peanuts. I'm allergic to this. So he's not afraid about talking about it. Very aware. He meets a new adult. They're going to hang out with their kids. I'm allergic to peanuts. And he says it. And that's the one he tells them because that's the one that he's anaphylactic to.
That's the big one.
That's the big one. So, but he will, after, sometime, he's very comfortable of letting anyone he's around know what is dangerous for him. And I can't have this. And so that's with school, that's with new people he meets, that's with family members. He's very comfortable in all of it and he knows, and he catches me, like I said, to this day, he'll still catch things that he's like, did you see this? or in because peanuts is a big one, it processed in a plant may contain. Yeah. And so he's like, I probably shouldn't have it. It may contain it.
It may contain it. Yeah.
It may contain it. So he's so cute about really keeping me in check, but himself, and he's super aware and comfortable with it. And I'm so proud of him every day for just how serious. Yeah. And we've since gone to the allergist. We're now starting the process of getting rid of his allergies. We're going to start the treatment and pray that it works. He's got a ton of environmental allergies, almost as much or more than the food allergies. So we're starting with those first. And the reason behind starting to tackle with the allergens, the environmental, is because those can always be attacking you because he's allergic to dust and all those things, pollen, all of it, grass, trees, everything. So they want your body to not be fighting those when they start introducing and dealing with food allergy part. So they want the system to be clean and fresh and healthy, not fighting anything. So we have started on those, and he gets 4 injections a week. So he goes on Tuesdays and Fridays and gets 2 injections, Tuesdays and Fridays, every Tuesday and Friday. And we started this out. He hated needles. He hated shots. And it just broke my little heart. It broke my heart to see him. But now he marches in, he hops up in the chair, he rolls up his sleeves, he does his little Superman arms. He's like, give it to me. And he sits there and waits. And I'm so proud of how much he's just owns it. And he's so excited, but he's excited now then to get to the food side because he's sad. He's had meltdowns when we come home from a Halloween, now, and 90% of his candy is nut laden, has nuts in it and everything else. He's like, I can't have it. So we've started buying candy that he can have, and we do a candy trade when we get home. I take all of the peanut stuff. I get to eat it because I adore peanuts, and I don't bring anything in the house because they don't. So I'll sneak those and put them in my hidey place, and we'll do a candy exchange. But nonetheless, it's you just find a way around it. But educating your child, letting them be a part of it. You've sent me some great articles that I've sat down and read with him to just say, I've never thought about the potential of contamination this way. Let's read this together. And it opens great dialogue. He asks questions he's not afraid to ask. And it's just really about keeping him comfortable with it, keeping your kids comfortable. And they will be. They're resilient. It's sad that they have to deal with it, but they don't know any different. That's their life. And it's important to give them ownership and let them understand how to manage it as soon as you possibly can, because like your son, he's now out in the world making his own decisions at times, and he has to be aware and watch. So I have to prepare Jake for that day to come that, hey, and it's silly, it's sad and scary because you think, okay, their first kiss, you have to be aware that this girl hasn't eaten peanuts or those things. And it's, it's just like, why do you have to think and talk about these things? But you have to. And so the more comfortable your child is, the more knowledge you can share with them, the better. But I'm hopeful that this food process that we do with him with the drops is going to work. I'm petrified. I'm scared to get to that stage. I really am, because I know what it looks like for him to have a peanut, and I'm scared for him to start that first drop. I mean, it started out as a minute amount, but I'm scared. I'm truly scared. But I hope that that going through this will take that fear or threat of anaphylactic away so that he can live a healthy life, and I wish that more people could go through it, but they're making great leaps and bounds and strides in research because allergies are becoming so much more prevalent in society today. The allergists and doctors and researchers are trying hard to really come up with ways to help people because it's hard to live a life that way. And it's not easy, but it's something that unfortunately is there. But I'm so thankful my little guy is so comfortable with it and does his part to really, keep himself safe because it's important. And I trust that he will, even when he's not with me.
Yeah, I think he will. I mean, that's the whole idea, is raising them for the present, but also with the end point in mind of independence. And, when they're younger, it requires all of your attention to make sure everything they would eat poison if you handed it to them. They're so trusting. But as they get older and start taking over, mistakes can be made by the mother, I learned. Because like you said, Jake's corrected you. There were times one time I put a shampoo in the basket, like a goofball, not reading the shampoo. I thought, this looks good. I told him, let's try this. And he picked it up and said, Mom, this is made with almonds. I said, what? And sure enough, just in small writing at the bottom, it said with almonds. I was like, what? And I was like, okay. It just
See?
Takes you back a step. Like, you can never let your guard down ever. And thank goodness he was paying attention, because I missed that. Oh,
yeah, it's true. And that's why, you can't take it all on as young as they are. Teach them, because they're gonna own it. Everything you can, and at first, like I said, I felt bad. I felt like I was burdening him. I felt like, this is a lot for a little person to carry, but he says it. He's like, if I get it, I die, and I don't want to die yet. And he'll say that. But hearing your child say something like that, you shouldn't have to as a parent. It's like, I'm sorry, you have to even think about that. But he's like, it's my life, it's my life, and I don't want to die. And so while it's super sad to hear him say that, I'm super thankful that he understands the gravity and the seriousness of it, to know that we're not joking. This is something that's super serious for him. And unfortunately it's sad because he looks at me and he's like, I want to try peanut butter, and I'm like, I'm sorry, but he's like, it's okay. I'd rather live. So
living would be better.
It's okay. But it's sad that he feels that way, but at the same time, like I said, he owns it, and just, it makes me feel good that he truly takes it serious. And I know that's because we've really talked about it with him and let him know everything we possibly can on the subject. So.
Right. That's what we have to do. That there's no way around it. And I did explain it to my son, and I still do to other people. Just consider it a condition or an illness. People have diabetes. They have things that cause them to have to work around what the rest of the world just does without thinking. This is one of those things. I told him, this is your thing. But the good news is, you know what it is. So we can work around it. And because he has EOE, which is eosinophilic esophagitis, so good at saying that.
That's a mouthful.
Yeah, that's why it's been shortened to EOE, but more and more kids are developing EOE. So I just say it's like when you have asthma, that's inflammation in your lungs. Well, EOE is just inflammation in your esophagus, and it can be tied to food allergies. And he has that, so he can't take the oral treatment to try to get an intolerance to peanut. But I mean, get a tolerance to peanut. I'm sorry, to get an intolerance to peanut. He can't do it. But there are other things coming. So we're watching. There was the patch, which almost came out. It was so close. He was on the list for the patch, but then they pulled it back. So we have to assume something happened, and they just want it to be safe. It has to be safe. It has to work. So we're waiting for that. Other things coming. So we just have to stay hopeful. But the good news is it can be avoided. These allergens can be avoided. And that's what we're doing right now. So it's working. Exactly. It's scary. Everything's scary though. You said you're scared about the treatment, because it's just nervous to do it. It's scary to let your child get in their car and drive away to go meet friends. That's scary, but it's also scary to have them at home not seeing friends, or to not try a treatment your doctor recommends. That's scary too. Everything's
putting
scary.
him in a bubble.
Yeah.
Because I don't want him not to live life. I want him to live his life as much as he can, But the reality is we have to take that extra factor in account, because it's not a joke. It's something that truly could end their life, and you can't gamble with that. So as much as I know there's birthday parties I've kept him from that I knew
I have to.
Unfortunately
Sometimes
probably weren't going to be
to.
safe. You have to, and it's a tough choice to make, but you know what, you can find some way to make it up to them. And that's what we need to do is remember they are missing out. So try to make sure you give them other things, and take them on other adventures or whatever it is they're missing, because they don't deserve that, and it's sad for them, but they're, like I said, they're resilient and they understand. But it's if you talk to them about it, you can't just be like, nope, you're not going. Just, no.
You need a replacement activity. Like we did the same thing as you. We would switch out his candy. He would trade it for what he wanted, and he loved that. And then it turned into he asked for, can he just trade all of his candy? Like if he could have a goal, like 100 pieces for a special Lego set he wanted. This was when he was 7, 8, 9 years old, and I said yes. Then later my husband said, he's pretty smart. These Legos cost $100.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh.
They know. Yep.
Yeah.
So absolutely. But Halloween was always so hard, and it still is, because he sees all this great candy. He's like, why do so many people give nuts? And that's another thing I wish people giving out candy would realize is about the allergies is to maybe have two options, or not be so nut heavy, because nuts are a big allergen among people of all different kinds. And unfortunately, Jake's allergic to everything except for pecans, I think. But I wouldn't even try a pecan at this point because he's allergic to every other nut. Why wouldn't it be that one too?
Right.
And so they're a big time allergen among people. So it's kind of sad that that's given out, because truly last year or the year before COVID, 90% of his candy was something with nuts. And I'm like, it was shocking. And I felt really bad. So I always try to make sure that too.
We were told his peanut allergy is so high because, it's not an exact test. It's not like you get concrete 100% this is correct testing yet. You have a lot of information, but it's not 100%. So they just said no nuts for him because his peanut is so high and other nuts are there. Just avoid nuts. Let's just not do any nuts, which was fine with me because it kept it simple. Okay, no nuts, no peanuts. The end.
Yep.
Right.
The end.
Except for when I tried to buy the shampoo with it in there. That was the only.
Yeah. And I'm glad you told me that, because honestly, I wouldn't have thought about that. But because his skin is still so sensitive, he is terrible. If we use anything that's got a perfume or a dye or anything, he breaks out in horrible rashes. So believe it or not, I'm still using a baby Aquaphor baby stuff for him because his skin is still so sensitive.
I did.
But he's getting to the point where he wants something else. He's like, I want something else because he's getting bigger, and he's like, I don't like things that say baby on them. I'm like, I'm sorry, but it's safe. So I'm going to have to look for alternatives for him coming up. But I would have not thought to have looked for almond, but it makes perfect sense. I mean, so I will not.
We went through that same issue with my son because the lotion I gave him was a baby lotion and it was pink and had a baby on the front, but it had no fragrance, nothing. And then one day, maybe when he was 8 or 9, he was like, I am not using this lotion anymore. And little did I know, at some point after that, he just stopped using lotion altogether. I guess men don't use very much lotion, and boys start getting older and realize, like, I don't have to use this and I'm not going to anymore.
Yep. He clued in. He turns 9 in January, but we had a big talk. It was even yesterday. I think he's like, I don't want to use this anymore. It has a picture of a baby on the front. Like, so what am I supposed to do then? I'm like, so it works and it doesn't hurt your skin. So this is what we're sticking with.
It's not helpful to say, but you're my baby. That doesn't help.
I know.
I will tell you.
No, it doesn't. No. And I'm guilty of that.
Aside from the food allergies and restaurant manager job, your husband, I wanted to ask you about your own writing because you're part of the writing community on Twitter. So what is your work in progress that you're working on right now?
I've got a couple of things going. One that I've been working on for a while that will be done first is kind of a romance. And it's based a lot off of my own personal relationship with my husband and how we met, and kind of the struggles of getting our two lives meshed together. And I've told so many people the story, and the first thing they said is that needs to be a book because it's kind of an amazing story. And so I'll just give it real quick. My husband and I met, I was 24, he was 24. I got married young. I had already been married. I had 2 children from that marriage. I'd already been in the military. I'd been in the Navy at that point. I had already been a restaurant manager. So I had a lot going on in life. And unfortunately, my first husband ended up cheating on me. And it was painful. It was awful. My neighbor I didn't even know was calling and telling me, I don't know you, but your husband's here with a woman right now. Talk about humiliating. So it was terrible. So I'm coming out of it. It was horrible. It was horrible. And we cleanly broke, and it was a nice divorce though. So I will say that, we didn't drag it out. However, I was a restaurant manager at this point. At 24, I was already a GM.
Okay. Wow.
And I was now going to be single mom of 2 kids that were 1 and 3, and a restaurant manager GM. So carrying that weight. And I was like, I can't, I'm going to crumble. It's too much to carry, because being a GM is a lot of stress. I work 50 to 60 hours a week. I'm gone a lot. I just couldn't handle it. So to be kind of evil, I decided to go get a job in a bar, because I knew my ex-husband would hate that. And I just wanted to do it. And honestly, I wanted to get an environment where I could meet somebody and just go have fun, because he'd been having fun and I hadn't had a lot of fun in a lot of years. And my goal was honestly just to go meet somebody and have fun. Nothing. Yeah. My very first night there, my very first table, I met my husband. We instantly clicked. We started talking, and we never spent a day apart. It was just instant. He asked me out that night. We went out, just fell in love. But then as we're dating, I'm realizing I'm all alone now in Washington. My entire family's in Texas. I've got these 2 little boys. He didn't have any kids because his daughter was with her mother at the time. And I'm like, it's not fair. It's not fair for me to bring all this baggage to your life when he had a business he was running and everything. And I just felt guilty. I felt really guilty that I was bringing too much complication. So I ended it. And I said, it's not fair. So I packed up everything I owned and moved back to Texas and left him here in Washington. Within 24 hours, maybe 48, he was on the phone and said, I don't care. I want to be with you. And if that means I have to be in Texas, I will. He shut down his business, packed up all his belongings, and followed me to Texas. And we have been together ever since, 24 years now. And it was just really interesting. But not long after, we learned about his vision, and I always knew I'd be the only income. Then we got custody of his daughter. So that added another mouth to our lives. So then we had all 3 kids. And that's why we didn't have any children of our own, because I was the only income. We had a blind husband, 3 kids, and we're like, okay, we can't have a child together. Yeah. It's just too much. It would be too much. Cost of living, just nuts. So once all the kids moved out, though, we looked at each other and like, want to have that kid? So
now what?
That's where Jake came from. So we had a kid later in life after the other kids had already moved out. So my oldest one is 28 going on 29, and Jake is 8 going on 9. So the 20-year difference between my oldest and youngest.
That's funny.
But it's a neat story.
Yeah, that's really neat. I'm excited about that. I would definitely read that. So you said 2
and then
books.
The other book. Yeah. The other book is a leadership book about being a good leader and really engaging your team and being a good boss. And, being a boss, you think has been the same, but all these generations are completely different to deal with. Generation X, millennials, now the Generation Z, they all need different things. And being a good manager and knowing how to connect and make them feel valued and lift them up and to retain them, there's a lot that goes into it. But I've worked with a lot of bad leaders that truly just made your life not fun and you'd want to leave. And most people in the restaurant industry quit because of a person, not the job. And so this was a really big call out to me, because I have loyal people. I have people that whatever company I left would follow me, and people that would come. I had people that would come and drive 20 miles just to come work under me because of the environment that I created and maintained. So I think that just needs to be a big call to action on how you treat people and what it means to be a good boss and to truly get to know everyone. So my other book is about good, solid leadership. So
that sounds great too. Yes. So one is a fiction and one would be more nonfiction.
Correct.
Is the one that's based off of your husband and your relationship, but it'll be fiction.
It'll be fiction. I'm going to add some more fun things to it because it's not all that exciting. But yeah, it'll just kind of be used. The premise is being used essentially.
Right. That's okay. That makes sense. I wrote a fiction book, but I used a lot of true things in that book based on our life. Right. So I love that because I think it brings reality and truth to a fun fiction story that makes it even more believable and an investment because things in the story actually happened. Not everything. Yeah. I get asked all the time, like, which parts were real? People really want to know. Maybe we'll talk about that.
Just going to keep you guessing.
But a couple of times, I always got good feedback from friends, family, and reviews, things like that. But a couple of times I've heard the comment, I liked this part, but the funny thing is that wouldn't happen in real life, but I thought it was hilarious. And the times I've been told that happened, people. What you're saying couldn't happen did in fact happen, but I have not said that to them. And there were some things that had happened I put in there that were more serious, like my son asking if he should have a will. You know, I had the child in the book ask if he needs a will in case he dies. You know, that's something that you get to hear things like that from your child who has food allergies, right? And
yeah, it's heartbreaking.
Yeah, like some of those, but I really considered whether I should put that in there because I didn't want to bring the room down, so to speak. But I thought, no, because that's part, right? And like talking to
I'm glad you put it in there. It made me not feel alone when I have my child asking me, am I going to die? You know, should I be worried? You know, because that is a thought that goes through their little minds that's very real. And it's nice to know that I'm not alone or another parent isn't alone in hearing those things. So, well,
it is fun to put things like that in a book and then make the story around it. So I'm looking forward to your book, but I think I've figured out what the problem is here. You read a lot of books. You read mine. You read a lot of books. Yep. When are you writing?
I think I'm over 300 for the year reading.
Wow. And it's October
at this point.
So
it's October. Now that is a combination between eyeball reading and listening because I listen a lot. When I drive places or if I'm doing dishes or if I'm in the grocery store, I am listening to a book. And I like it better. I used to be a music nut and I still love music, but I've listened to so much music that I love so much. It's kind of gotten old. So since the pandemic started, I've really gotten into audiobooks a lot and I love them. And so because I can listen to them anywhere, you know, and I'll keep an earbud in literally all day long. And if I'm walking somewhere that's quiet, I'll just click play and it'll go. So with that, I think 337 books read this year at this point. So
wow, that's a lot.
It's a lot. It's a lot.
You've got to like designate some time to writing so that we can read your book.
It's gone away a little. I got a little patch of depression that hits, just like all of us with this pandemic. It kind of hit me a little bit, and I kind of lost my creative flow. Mm-hmm. So getting back into the reading them, it actually kind of brought it back. You know, I just read different things that inspire me, you know, or make me feel good, you know, whatever mood I need, and that actually helps me get a lot of it back. So I'll sit down and do it. I'm not far away from the romance being done, but I did take a step back for a little bit. I really did, you know, just to focus on doing nothing for a little while because I felt overwhelmed, and reading is an excellent escape for me to just let go and get in a different world and a mindset. And not to mention, I have met so many wonderful independent authors on Twitter, and I just love to support them and read. And I've read so many great books, it's hard for me to stop. So I'm trying really hard to focus and regain myself and get back. Yes. So, but I will never stop. I'll never stop reading and supporting there because I've probably read some of the best books I've ever read from people going from there, you know, and the group and the community there, just great stuff. So it's wonderful. Yeah.
Well, good. So keep reading, but just take some time to finish that book so we can read your book.
I'll get it done. I will. I promise.
And then you can come back and we can talk again and you can update us on what's happening with Jake and where you are and your book. We could talk about that again.
Perfect.
It's ready. I would do that.
Your motivator.
Well, thank you so much for speaking with me and having this interview today and sharing such important information about the restaurant industry and everything that you've been through with your son, your husband, your job. It's a lot, but you do it well. I have to say congratulations to you on all of your success. And I can't wait to hear how it goes with Jake and how he does with his treatments.
Me too. And I will definitely keep you posted. And I thank you for having me. And truly, if anyone has more questions, you know how to find me on Twitter. They can connect. If there's anything I can ever help with anyone with the restaurant side, I'd be happy to. So
okay. Well, thank you again, and take care. Okay, bye-bye.
Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.
The only way that we can keep learning and growing is to keep asking questions. So we're just going to keep finding knowledge and sharing information, and we'll do it together. Thank you for watching. I'm Caroline Fleur, and we'll see you next time.